In 2012, a single online course from Stanford University attracted 160,000 students from 190 countries in just a few weeks. That is more learners than most universities will ever teach in their entire institutional history, and it happened without a single physical classroom, without a campus, and without anyone paying $1 in tuition. That number should stop you in your tracks. Because it did not just represent a quirky experiment. It signaled the beginning of a fundamental shift in how human beings access knowledge, one that would challenge centuries of educational tradition and put world-class learning within reach of anyone with an internet connection. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly how this revolution started, who drove it forward, and what the data actually tells us about whether it worked. You will also encounter the single most counterintuitive truth about online education that the industry quietly tries to avoid, a truth that changes how you should think about learning itself. To understand the MOOC revolution, you need to go back to the early 2000s. The internet had already transformed music, retail, and communication. But formal education remained stubbornly traditional. Universities still operated on a medieval model, physical attendance, geographical barriers, and price tags that placed quality education out of reach for billions of people worldwide. The first serious crack appeared in 2001 when MIT launched its OpenCourseWare initiative, making lecture notes, syllabi, and course materials freely available online. It was a radical move. MIT essentially said, "Here's what we teach, free of charge, for anyone on Earth." Within a year, the site had 4 million visitors. The demand was clearly there. But OpenCourseWare had a ceiling. It offered materials, not instruction. There were no professors interacting with students, no structured learning paths, and no credentials at the end. The true turning point came in 2008, when Canadian educators George Siemens and Stephen Downes ran an experimental course called Connectivism and Connective Knowledge. It enrolled 25 traditional university students alongside 2,300 online participants who took the course for free. This was the first time the term MOOC, Massive Open Online Course, entered the vocabulary of education. The idea was simple but explosive. Scale the classroom infinitely. Remove the geographic and financial walls. Let learning happen at a global level. Then 2012 happened. Stanford professor Sebastian Thrun offered his Introduction to Artificial Intelligence course online, and 160,000 people signed up. The response was so overwhelming that Thrun later described sitting in his office, shaking. He had reached more students in one course than he could have taught in multiple lifetimes of traditional instruction. Within months, he left Stanford and co-founded Udacity. Around the same time, 2 other Stanford professors, Andrew Ng and Daphne Koller, launched Coursera. MIT and Harvard jointly created edX with a combined investment of $60 million. The MOOC arms race had begun. By 2013, the New York Times had already declared 2012 the year of the MOOC. Coursera alone had signed partnerships with 33 universities by the end of that year. Global enrollment across platforms reached into the tens of millions. Governments from India to Brazil to the United Kingdom began exploring MOOCs as national education infrastructure. The promise was electrifying: democratize elite education, close the global skills gap, and make a Harvard-level education available in rural Kenya or suburban Ohio equally. But here's what nobody talks about. The completion rates were catastrophic. Studies consistently found that between 85 and 97% of people who enrolled in MOOCs never finished them. A massive analysis of MIT and Harvard edX courses found an average completion rate of just 5.5%. Some courses saw completion rates below 3%. The institutions that had promised a revolution in access were quietly sitting on mountains of data showing that most learners were abandoning ship within the first 2 weeks. This was not a small footnote. This was a fundamental challenge to the entire premise. If learning is free and accessible, why is almost nobody finishing? Researchers began digging into the dropout data, and what they found reframed the entire conversation. The learners abandoning MOOCs were not failing. Many of them were achieving exactly what they came to do. A 2015 study from the University of Pennsylvania found that a large segment of MOOC participants had no intention of completing the course. They enrolled to sample content, explore a topic, or grab specific knowledge for immediate professional use. They were not students in the traditional sense. They were adult professionals self-directing their own learning in ways the old educational model had never accommodated. This insight completely changes how you evaluate MOOCs. Completion rate is the wrong metric. The right metric is value delivered per learner, and by that measure, the picture looks dramatically different. Coursera reported in 2020 that 87% of learners who completed their programs reported career benefits, new skills applied at work, promotions, or career changes. Google, IBM, and Meta began accepting Coursera and edX certifications in lieu of traditional degrees for certain roles. The American Council on Education started recommending college credit for specific MOOC courses. The credentialing gap, once the fatal flaw of online learning, was beginning to close. The financial architecture of MOOCs also evolved in ways that shaped their long-term survival. The original free-for-all model was unsustainable. Platforms began introducing verified certificates, professional specializations, and eventually full degrees. edX partnered with Georgia Tech to offer a fully accredited Master of Science in Computer Science for under $10,000, a fraction of the traditional cost. Coursera launched its degree programs, and enrollment exploded. By 2023, Coursera had over 124 million registered learners globally, and edX had merged with 2U in a deal worth $800 million, signaling that online education was now a major economic sector. The geographic impact deserves its own examination. In countries where university enrollment was structurally limited by capacity or cost, MOOCs filled a genuine void. India became one of Coursera's largest user bases. Nigeria, Brazil, and Indonesia appeared repeatedly in platform enrollment data. A 2019 World Bank study found that MOOC learners in developing economies were more likely to apply learned skills directly to entrepreneurial activity compared to their counterparts in developed nations. The democratization argument, while overstated by early boosters, was not entirely fiction. Corporate training was perhaps the quietest but most significant arena of MOOC adoption. Companies like AT&T partnered directly with Udacity to upskill their workforce, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in structured online learning programs. LinkedIn Learning, technically a descendant of the MOOC philosophy, became embedded inside the workflow of hundreds of thousands of organizations. The question stopped being whether online learning worked and became which version of online learning worked for which purpose. The COVID-19 pandemic functioned as a forced global experiment. Between March and May of 2020, Coursera saw a 644% increase in enrollment from enterprise customers and governments. edX reported 6 million new registrations in just the first few months of the pandemic. Countries that had dismissed online learning as supplemental suddenly had no alternative. The infrastructure built by a decade of MOOC development became critical public education infrastructure almost overnight. What does all of this mean for the future of learning? The honest answer is that MOOCs did not replace traditional universities, and probably never will. What they did was something more nuanced. And arguably more important. They created a parallel system of lifelong learning that sits alongside formal education rather than beneath it. They proved that motivated adults, given access to structured content and credentialed outcomes, will invest in their own development outside the traditional academic calendar. The MOOC revolution also forced universities to reckon with their own value proposition. If MIT puts its content online for free, what exactly are students paying $200,000 for? The answer, institutions discovered, was not content. It was network, mentorship, signaling, and the structured social experience of learning alongside peers over time. That clarity has made traditional universities stronger, not weaker, because they stopped competing on content access and started doubling down on what they uniquely offer. The key takeaways from this story are straightforward. In roughly a decade, MOOCs went from a Stanford experiment to a global industry serving over 100 million people. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Brain Boost Academy for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.